about it on Gloucester Radio, and I couldn't get to Newent that day, which was really frustrating. But I then I looked online and wrote to the relevant person. Didn't hear anything back, and then literally it was months later I got an email with an invitation to submit, and I was quite busy at the time, and I just knew that I really wanted to put the best possible sketches forward, and just changed all my plans and did, I think it was it was 10 sketches in the end, but 8 of them or 6 of them for the initial pitch. And I was, for the first time in my life really determined from the point of view of telling myself I'm going to get this, where I wouldn't normally be like that. Because I'm competitive when I'm on a horse, but other than that I'm not competitive at all, until it came to getting the Valegro pitch. And then, so once the drawings were done, it was a sort of wait and see. And then when I heard that was fabulous, and I just couldn't wait to get to see him, so I went up and did a lot of measurements, sort of skeletal measurements. Obviously, he was just stood in his stable, so you there's so many videos of him performing, use those, and started the armature, and then start building out. I actually went to visit him last week and had a really good chat with Carl and a sort of critique on where it was. So we actually sat him back more, because I didn't have him just sat on his haunches enough, and his centre of gravity was sort of too far forward. And so I then came home and I started to deconstruct it a little bit, and I went through my phase that I always go through. So there's so much work to do, but I can see what I've got to do, which is a good thing. And then I whizzed in just to see him for yesterday. I didn't take the maquette with me, and I just got back and I was just couldn't wait to get going, because I can see all the things that need doing, and my hands don't work as quickly as my head, my mind, and it's a case of just being methodical and not losing that feeling you get when you see him, because he totally blows me away, and I've got to inject that passion into this. It's easy when you've got such a wonderful model, but I want to do him justice.
Which bit did you start on with
him? So I got the armature done, which is made of aluminium that you can bend. So in the tail, I haven't put any on there, and he's got such a straight tail when he performs, so I just take these off. There's that grade aluminium, and then I've actually wrapped florist wire around it as a key. So got that, and then I got him all into position just in wire, and you can sort of stand back and visualise the whole thing, and you try and get that quite central, so that the leg, for example, would come down through like that and get every joint in the right place. That goes up to a sort of T-bar section which runs all along through, and then I've dropped it down from behind the hip and going up to the wither, and try and get the neck where the actual skeleton would be, which is lower than most people think. So it would come up like that and then drop down in the head. I'll work the eye sockets and won't put the eyeballs in until I'm happy with the eye sockets, and everyone always looks at me and says, get his eyeballs in, or when you're working on things, and it's just that until I'm happy I won't really do it. And the most useful view for that is actually from there, looking at the socket. So if you imagine you're sat on your horse if you ride, you know that view really well, and where the socket comes here, you've just got to get that sat down properly into the cheekbone, and it works its way around then to the front, and it's sort of easy to put an eyeball in and having it look in the right place rather than goggle-eyed.
Do you normally start, like, when you start working the details, do you normally do like legs or?
I want to get his expression right, but I've got to get his carriage right in his ribs, and then everything will work out from that. And it's amazing how when he is doing the piaffe, for example, I mean, he's really sat, but you almost feel that he's inhaling there, and he's working so hard. and so I want to get that rib cage and the shoulder and the hips correct. Obviously I've got to get the portrait element all over, and he's so distinctive and people will just know like that if it's not quite right, so I need to work on every detail. Once those are right, I tend to then do the legs without, without sort of, without thinking about it, you just sort of tend to work down and work round, and all of these areas I need to raise him up here so that I can get in underneath, because the muscles that wrap round will wrap round and through, and once you get that right, it dictates where the stifle's correct, and which comes down to the hock and the fetlock, and you sort of tend to keep working all over. And the beauty of the sculpture is you do work in the round, so I can constantly move and stand back, and I'm just sort of looking. And also sometimes the last thing at night when you switch the lights off and you just say got one light on, and they go, oh, it's dawned on me what's wrong. And it's really important to look at it under different light and different shadow. And also with bronze, you'll see it particularly when you put the eye in. If you I'll just do an example here. If you cut in at certain ways, you can create certain shadows, which is absolutely not what you'd want there on the rib cage, but with the eyes, if you cut in a certain way, and it can give a blackness and a depth to them, which really works well in the bronze. You sort of know, you have to know how it's going to translate into that final material.
I think it's his eyebrow as well.
I know, he's so expressive. He's got, I know he's a gelding, but he's got the sort of stamp of a stallion in many ways, and that really emanates from the eye. Put that back together. So I need to get down and work all under here. There's lots of areas to work on. The material is a plastiline clay, so actually it's great. It doesn't dry out, and it just means it's really quite tough, and I can work, carry it to Valegro, put it in the car, take it to him, and I'll actually warm it up, especially at the early stages. So these pots here are melt pots. So when you do want something that's quite warm now, so it's really, really soft. When you're getting to the final details, it's really useful to have it quite cold. So if you've got a big fridge, you can put it in, and it doesn't tear with the tool. It's really nice, but that's, for example, really soft. And I'd start off that way because it's just quick, and just roll it into sausages like that. So we'll start actually adding a bit of tail, which I'll probably take off later because it's useful for me to do that and move the tail out of the way of legs and things. So he's got the most beautiful tail carriage. It's very straight, which is part of his brilliance. He's so disciplined. There's no what's the word I'm looking for? He doesn't react negatively to things, and sometimes when horses do, you'll see it in the tail carriage, and he's got a very straight, really amazing tail carriage. So I want it to look light as well, which is quite a feat to achieve in plastiline, to give it that air of being hair, whereas the legs I want sort of more weight, particularly in the hind leg, but this front limb, it's got to look as if it's just about to come up rather than him rocking on it. It just takes time, but we'll get there. I was asked a question about what I'm sort of basing it on as to Valegro's sort of timeline, and he had such an amazing, long and successful career, doing 2 Olympics and all his other accolades that he's won. And I think it's amazing with horses, their coats give you different expressions. So summertime coat compared to when they're clipped, and he's so beautifully turned out and managed that that wouldn't matter so much. But I've not really stuck to one particular competition because he's just been so successful and looks so incredible in all of them. And you find, I've sat and watched his videos of him for a good, I don't know, about 8 hours before I started drawing, because I had to feel that I knew him, and I'd not even met him, and I needed a sense of what was in this mind to try and recreate the drawings. And I can't actually say there's not one video that or photograph that doesn't show him at his absolute best. So I've not got a specific date in mind of where I'm sticking this to, and I think in a way that's a nice thing, because people that have been lucky enough to see him, say at an Olympic test or Olympia or all these different places, hopefully they'll view the maquette in the final sculpture as if they were there seeing him. So I think it's probably quite nice not to have this was when he was at Rio, for example. So once I'm happy with the maquette and I've got the approval from Carl and Charlotte with it, because it's really important. They know him better than anyone, as well as Alan. And I really want the three of them to have a good look, and if they're happy and with the piece, that will then go and have a mould made and go into bronze and cast. I'll then have a hard copy of that to scale up to a half-life size. So I will then at that point in steel weld up an armature. So this element is called the armature, which runs throughout the whole of Valegro, all the way down the legs, the tail and through the head. So I will weld up a T-bar that will come up and go at a certain point, as I showed on the spine, and I'll plot all the distances, because it's in metal that I won't be able to bend, unlike the aluminium of this one. So for example, I'll plot all the joints on him, so we'll go from the ground, fetlock, knee, elbow, point of shoulder, wither, hips, stifle, ischium, hocks, fetlock, and get those all right, and then do measurements that are comparative. So I might do from the pole to the hip, or from the knee to the hock, and get them all right from, I will have at that point calculated it all correctly on the maquette. Once that's done and I'm happy with it, I then move on. I take quite a long time with my armatures. There's nothing worse than if you're sculpting on a half-life or any size really, and you want to remove some soft clay, because I'll do the half-life in clay, and then you just hit metal, and it's just like that absolute frustration. The angle grinder comes out and you have to go backwards in order to go forward. So that's why I spend a long time on the armature. And then it's literally a case of, as I've done with the maquette, get handfuls of clay and roll them up just like a child would, like that. It's just, I love this stage. It's too cold to do at the moment. And start applying them on. And I will try and work with the muscles as they go, and get a rib cage in and get the hips in, get the shoulders and the elbow, and really mark where those points are, because they help me keep it correct. 'Cause it's very easy to get absorbed in one area and you go off on a tangent, and all of a sudden you realise, I know that elbow's not right at the moment, but you realise that instead of the elbow being right here, it's either too far forward or too far back. And that's the importance of constantly turning it and looking around. So with the half-life, I'll actually have it on a tabletop height, but I'll have it so that I can rotate it and stand back and keep working in the round rather than one particular area. It's lovely with a half-life size or a life size, because you tend to get really involved, like your whole body gets involved with it, from the point of view that you're not doing a small area. And I never ache or have any pain or anything when I'm doing big work. With the small work, you can tend to, because you're so focused on the detail and it's small area, that you tend to sort of finish and you kind of, I need to move. So it's really important. That's why it's good having dogs with me all the time, because I have to constantly be taking them out and giving them a little bit of attention and stroking them, and it keeps you moving and breathing. If I'm stuck on something, I'll tend to hold my breath, which is no good thing to do. And just as the horses are when they're doing anything, you've got to have their breathing right, and it just means they're relaxed and they're in a rhythm and their body's working properly. So it's very similar. I actually equate the sculpting, when you're sort of in that zone, to the same feeling you get when you're riding a horse, and you can lose track of time, and everything just sort of comes together. And that's just, for me, that's the most similar thing to sculpting, is schooling a horse. And I love both of them. At times you've got to be in the right frame of mind as well, because I think it's really important when you're around horses that if you're not having a good day, then, do you know what, just go for a little hack and come back later on, because they deserve so much. They deserve the best of people all the time, I think. No, there's so much time is in the modelling, the clay stage, but unless the armature's strong and in the right place, the sculpt's never going to go right, because if it's not strong enough, it will fall over, and if it's in the wrong place, it's just so frustrating. And all you can see is your eye goes straight to it, and a line is blurred or the rhythm of the piece is gone. So that's the one thing. I think anyone can sculpt, really. Anyone can pick up a piece of clay and make a shape. The most difficult thing is keeping that structure.
There's science to it.
Yeah, there is, and it's frustrating. And I only ever have learned the hard way, and I think that's what we do in life. But I've learned that I've got to learn to weld properly in order to make a good armature, because otherwise, hours and hours of sculpting would go like that in the car, and it's done with that moving. And I was nearly at the end of a sculpture. And I could see it in the rear view mirror, and I just had to brake at something, and this horse that was stood there just went ka-chung, and I just could have cried, but I'll now always make a good strong armature. Learn the hard way. Yeah. Find it really useful to draw at this stage, all the stages, and definitely up to this stage, is draw what would be central lines on things, and I'll do it on the legs as well, just so that you know that you've got correct balance and alignment. So I would come down from the shoulder on this straight leg, and it would come straight down. I can see so much wrong with it at the moment. And then another really important thing is to obviously make sure that for example, on the front legs, you've got the same length from knee to fetlock on both legs and elbows to knee, and really double check stuff. That's when it will really bite you if you're scaling up as well, apart from the annoyance of not having it right. But something on this, so this is a sixth life, so if you imagine an error, that sort of big sixth life, when you scale up, it's going to be that big, and yeah, it can really bite you in the bum. Not really, no. And I've never even thought about it. I think it helps that I've ridden. I think it really helps, because you and competed, and I'm really passionate about the dressage, and maybe that came through with the drawings, I don't know, but I know when I love doing the drawings, and I just got, if I'm stuck in 3D, I'll always go to 2D. But I just got absorbed in them, and time flew by. I lost track of time, so I don't know why that one they were chosen, but I'll have to ask.
We'll have to ask. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Right, let's go to the pub.